Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. Today I'm joined by Misa for the first of our consultation sessions. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below and we'll get back to you personally. And finally, you can reserve your place in one of my seminars, join my monthly membership group, or purchase any of my mind-body guides, also known as the PDFs, at www.crushingdoubt.org. Check out our website for our latest promotions and opportunities. Now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Misa. Misa, thank you so much for joining me here today. I always say this at the beginning of these interviews, but it really is important to recognize there's a sacrifice in being here. You know, you're making yourself vulnerable. I am very appreciative of it. It's going to help a lot of people. All of these videos have helped a lot of people. But for now, what I want to do is just think of this as it's a conversation between me and you. We are trying to get you what you need here. And you already know about the columns work because you went through the seminar. You're now in the membership groups. So you really, you come into this in a kind of advanced position, which is really great. But even so, no matter where you are in the position of learning these things, we have the specific columns that you're working with. So today we're going to get into the emotions column. We can always jump around to the other columns, but what we are doing is this thing that I call the mind-body map, which you know about. We're going to try to get your 3 columns spelled out a bit more and in clearer focus so that we can really start to make that system work even more specifically for you. And then in the 4th session, we'll get into action steps that you'll do with each column. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So you just speak freely, and I'm going to kind of guide you through this. We're working on the emotions column today. So the place that I want to start is to start to think about the broad topics that are in your emotions column. Now, I know that in addition to having back pain, you've been going through a lot of emotional stuff lately, and that goes back to your history as well. So I may even ask you about some things that already we've talked about, but they will be getting honed in a particular way here. So what I want to do is think about the emotions column, and I want to think about the very broad topics that are the kinds of things that can lead to symptom onset and upticks. So I know you've been dealing with chronic back, I'll put in quotes because you know I don't love the word chronic, but you've been dealing with back pain, and it's pretty consistent, right? So at the same time, do you have other symptoms that come on all of a sudden, or do you find that it's really primarily that?
I think, mainly the back pain. I think I mentioned to you before, like it's alarming to me because I've never really dealt with much pain my whole life. I consider myself very lucky. But just recently, I've just developed this pain between my shoulder blades. And then something you said a long time ago in a clubhouse room just like started to make sense, that it seems to be just like shifting. It's like moving around and it's not really consistent. Like there's one consistent thing that I have in my back, but then, that started to like shoot out and like I got like my arm started hurting and like that my hand started hurting and I was like, oh man, it's like carpal tunnel or something. I don't know. I've and it's evolved, like, currently I'm like feeling more so my neck and like it's shooting up and now I'm getting headaches.
Let me ask.
But it's definitely moving around, I think.
Okay, so let me ask this, Misa, because I'm just trying to evaluate in the columns what's happening here.
Yeah.
When you do get a symptom that moves into a new area, does it tend to stay in that area once it's there, or do you find that it's really just moving all over the place?
It maybe stays in that area that day, or like for as long as I'm able to. Like I'm only able to notice it for a certain amount of time because I'm not very like keen on like being aware of what's going on with my body.
Uh-huh.
Like this is all new stuff to me. So I'm like, oh, I noticed that it was kind of doing this yesterday, but then I forget like when did it go away or did it even go away? Is it still there? So I struggle with like being aware, I think.
This is interesting because I'm just going to tell you how I'm thinking about it in terms of the column structure so far. As you describe this, even though you're having symptoms that are kind of lasting and it's not going away, it does actually sound like this is much more emotions column based than it is doubt. Now, I know you and I have had some interactions where doubt was the key variable of that one moment. But we can tend to move you past doubt pretty quickly, I find.
Yeah.
What I think we're finding we may need to work on more is the emotions column and then ultimately the power column, helping you feel like you have a good handle on that whole emotional experience. So today is going to be really important with that. So I'm going to guide you through this. What I want to do, and do you have something to write with?
I do. I can type much faster, so.
Okay, type, or I can make some notes for you if you want, but it's usually better if you're making the notes. You want me to?
Yeah, that would actually help a lot.
Okay. Well, I'll make some notes then as we go, and I will send these to you later. So here's the things I want to think about. You've heard me say this before. When you're trying to figure out what's happening with you symptom-wise, first you locate the column you're working in. Well, we're determining just based on what we're doing today. We're working in the emotions column, right? So once we're there, the next step is to figure out the broad concepts within that column that tend to be operative. So what I want to do is think about parts of your life that can tend to lead to symptoms or even could lead to symptoms. So let's talk about the broad themes. I'm going to mention a couple just so that you have an idea of what I'm talking about. You're married, so married life can be a theme. So I'm going to write that down. I'm not putting, this is in no particular order, by the way. I'm just pulling this out. Married life can be one of those things. Your past traumas. So, and I know some things about you. So do you mind me saying some things in terms of what I know?
Fine. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know how we want to categorize this, but you grew up in a family situation, Jehovah's Witnesses, and there was like a very strong stance on lots of things. You've described it as growing up in a cult.
Yeah.
Right? So growing up in a cult, that's a pretty big theme, right? And it's going to mean lots of different things, but I'm going to put that down as one of the main things. But there are other examples, and they may or may not apply. It could be that you've had certain losses in your life that are a big deal. It could be that work is something that poses certain things for you, career path. It could be that friendships are important. It could be that loyalty and whether people have stuck by you matters. It could be that from a self-esteem standpoint, maybe you haven't felt good about you in some way.
Yeah.
Could be that you haven't felt seen. These are all very broad topics. So I want to make a list of them right now, and then we're going to go through the specifics. So I mentioned a couple. Which ones jumped out at you, and then you can add some?
I feel like all of those totally make sense to me, but the thing that stood out the most is I don't even know how you word it anymore, but it's like being seen and being heard seems to be like really loud for me. Not necessarily because people haven't been there to listen. Like I feel like I haven't been able to express. So I feel like if I was to be able to get to a place where I could, I think that there would be people around me that would listen. I've never really taken the time or never felt safe enough, I think is the key for me.
You just hit on the key word. I was just about to go there because as you were saying it, I was thinking, there's a major theme around safety.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put safety down as a kind of separate theme. I wrote down being seen and heard as one. I put not being able to express yourself as another, and then safety. We're just getting the broad picture right now.
Yeah.
Then we're going to go back and develop these into very specific themes, and I'll show you how. Is there anything else that's coming up for you about those things, and especially if there's emotion attached to it? I want you to tell me about that.
There's definitely a lot of emotion attached to it. I don't know that I identify exactly what the emotion is, but when I think of safety, I find myself like, I guess I hear a bunch of things that I've read about, and it's like, well, go to that place. And I'm like, what if you've never had that place? What if you've never felt that thing? I don't know that I know what that feels like. And the closest thing that I can relate to, I think, is, and I mentioned this to you before, I went into a clubhouse room once and heard people talk in a very vulnerable way in this public forum, essentially. However, it was in beta mode at the time. So I felt like when I was in there, I did feel somewhat safe, thinking that like no one that I know was going to be in there. And I think that gave me this feeling of like, and not only that, but hearing people express these things very vulnerably, also hearing the reaction from others to them and being very encouraging in them opening up. So I think that like all of those things combined, also the fact that Clubhouse was audio only, I think was a big thing for me, because I feel like the fact that I've navigated the world with without emotions, mainly logic, and my visual aids seem to have been like played a big role for me. That I think that's been a big problem for me, feeling safe. So those are the things that come out.
Let me ask I want to ask some follow-up questions. This is part of what we do in identifying these emotional themes. I understand what you're saying about safety. It makes perfect sense. I think you're hitting it on the head. But the question is, an added question is, what's the danger? If you're feeling unsafe, it means there is a danger. And I don't even know if you can identify it, because one of your themes is not being able to express. So it could be that you can't articulate it and you're going to need my help drawing that out. But do you have an idea of what the danger is?
I don't, but as you asked that, like the first thing that comes up for me is, I guess, being accepted. Like, I feel like I developed this idea that I'm going to let people down very early on. And that seems to be a theme for me, that like I get into friendships or relationships, I seem to always find a way to like feel like I just let that person down in one way or another. And if I don't, I'm going to find a way to do it. I'm going to find a way to somehow put myself in a situation where I find the thing that they're asking of me and I just don't follow through with that. So like, it sounds really ridiculous for me to say it even that way, but now I'm starting to see, like, I think there's a pattern there, and I think that's an overwhelming theme for me in all of my relationships.
Okay, now thank you for sharing that. Very important. And I want to say nothing you feel is ridiculous. I promise you. But it is very important, because the reason we're going over these themes is when you are having a symptom and something comes up, one of these themes is going to be active. So let's take this idea that you could let people down. And I can see how much emotion there is in it. We want to spell it out even more, because otherwise it gets channeled into symptoms. Let's say you're having a moment where you're talking to somebody and you're like, oh my God, I feel like I'm letting them down. Or you feel like they think you're letting them down, and maybe you're not letting them down. How do you feel you would let people down?
I think that it's hard to sorry, I'm going to go to this weird place. Like, logic seems to be the only thing that makes sense, right?
Don't be sorry. You be you.
So I think that the way that it makes sense in my head is that it's like I'm trying to anticipate what others ask of me, whether that's true or not.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just feel like it's like somehow they're not right for asking of that of me, even though they never asked. And then it feels like an unfair situation for me to be in.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm like rebelling against whatever the thing is that I think that, again, I don't know that anyone asked or anyone is pushing me to do any of it, but that I get that feeling, and then I take that, that becomes my attitude towards whatever the thing is, and then it affects ultimately what my actual dynamic is, the actual relationship, what people are actually trying to communicate with me. And then it actually does affect those things. But at first, I feel like I just make it all up in my head, and then I start to behave in a way where I feel like I'm being treated unjustly. And then it's like, it's almost like I create that scenario, and then I feel those things, and I behave from that feeling, of course.
So this is interesting. This is one of those moments where I need to make a note that's for the power column, because we're going to get to it later. But I'm wondering about something. I'm hearing the way that you interact with yourself. I mean this very empathically. The way you interact with yourself isn't fair, because it's like you're criticizing yourself so much. Just as an example, you said, I'm not really able to express myself, but you are articulating this beautifully. So I think there's some way in which you don't feel comfortable believing in you yet. Now, I'm just gathering all this information. We're going to start to shape it. But when you're feeling things, I just want to draw that out, and we'll put it in whatever column it belongs in. Does that feel right, what I'm saying, or does it ring a bell?
Yeah, it just hit a nerve. I think, I think I don't trust myself. I feel like, very early on, I had an experience, like physical abuse, where I blame myself. And I feel like I let myself down. So I think I've carried this with me, blaming myself, thinking that somehow I should have known. I should have known better. I should have done things differently. And I feel like I didn't realize that I was talking to myself that way. And but in you pointing that out, well, it would make sense that I think that I've been, and I think there's multiple situations that I'm blaming myself for, that I logically, now that I've started to look at it, it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't, I went my whole life never looking at it. I never thinking about it, never even having a thought about it. It's not until recent that I've discovered that this is something that I went through.
Okay, so what I'm seeing is right now we're kind of dealing with an emotions column and a power column thing. The power column aspect is that I don't think you've accepted fully all the things that have happened to you, because your tendency has been to blame yourself for them. Now, that's how it plays out in the power column. But in the emotions column, if something's happening in the present and a situation comes up where you are blaming yourself, your body's going to actually object to that. It's going to be like, no, don't blame us. It's not our fault. And your body's right. It's not your fault. But we have to help you become convinced of that. And your body's going to help us do that by us understanding these symptoms. That's what the emotions column is really for, is to understand you're going to have symptoms when something's going awry. So if you are, one of your emotional themes is self-blame, very clearly. I mean, I put it down for, and eventually we're going to get more specific than that. It could be I blame myself for the physical abuse. We need to get these into statements that you can hold on to and connect to in a given moment. Because what's going to happen, and what is happening, is there are other moments where you may be subject to some kind of abuse. Somebody's mistreating you. I know you well enough to know you're going to go inside yourself and be like, well, but maybe I did something. Maybe I contributed to this. Maybe. And suddenly you're blaming yourself, and then a symptom comes up. Yeah. We can reverse engineer that. When you have a symptom, you can say to yourself, am I blaming myself here? Because that's one of my themes. I need to look and see, is that the active theme here?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I'm always torn at moments like this, because there's the empathic, kind of more therapeutic side of things I could do, and I always want to do those. I want to have you feel seen. And I want to do the opposite of all the things that happen to you. And I'm going to do that. But I'm also going to give you the intellectual framework that we're going to then use. So I just wanted you to understand why I'll go to a kind of a little more intellectualized place about this, of just building out the themes. Okay? But you're doing great. You really are. And you're much more able to articulate things than you give yourself credit for. We'll get to that in a second. So let's start with this theme of I blame myself. The I blame myself theme. Are there other things you blame yourself for?
It's difficult for me to say. I feel like I don't think about that very much. This is kind of the first, like I've identified that in the past, but I forget about it. Like I don't dwell on it too much, or it hasn't stuck enough for me to start analyzing myself that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the fact that you told me that the way that I express myself pointed that out to you, which I wasn't observing, tells me that I probably blame myself for a whole lot of things. Like I think every, relationship or friendship or, any kind of interaction that I've had that I feel remotely uncomfortable with, of course, I'm blaming myself for all of that. So I hadn't recognized it, but I can see now that it's probably one of the biggest themes that I've been carrying with me.
Okay, so I'm going to try to get this phrased in a particular way that you can hold on to, because ultimately this is going to be a list that you're going to have. And you can keep it with you, on the computer or on your phone, wherever you want, because you made a key point. You forget some of it. You're going to forget some of it. I do too. It's one of the reasons why the emotions column list is important, because if I'm having a symptom and let's say I've forgotten, I know I have this list where I can go and be like, is it this? Is it this? And you'll see the one that jumps out at you.
Yeah.
And you don't have to remember it all then. So let's get this phrased. We're going to get a couple of these themes phrased well, and then we're going to continue to build them. So how would we phrase this? I have so far, I blame myself for the physical abuse, any relationship problems. What else? What else do you blame yourself for?
And I think ultimately whatever circumstance I happen to be in.
Okay. And ultimately, whatever circumstance, this is good. Not good that you're feeling it, but what I like about this is it captures, so I'll read this to you again because it captures something important. I blame myself for the physical abuse, any relationship problems, and ultimately whatever circumstances I happen to be in. I'm just going to add one thing to it. I am always held responsible by me. And in a way, I really admire you about this, but I know it's like being crucified. It's got to be really hard. So, I'm always held responsible by me. That sentence, if you're having a symptom, I want you to be able to check in and see, is that the active thing that is causing the symptom? Are you being blamed too harshly by yourself? That's just one possibility, though. I'm just saying that's a place to check, okay? Let me ask the question, though. Do you feel that we have that fully formed? Because we can keep working on this today or beyond. Does it capture the essence of that broad theme?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Yeah, I think so. I don't know where else to go with it. I feel other than, yeah, no, I think that's...
All right, well, we've started to develop this. Now, there's a related theme, the I let myself down theme. Does that fit in what we just did?
Yeah, I think so, right? Because
so I'm going to add it. So I am always held responsible by me, and I feel I've let myself down or should have known better. Just taking your words, because your words are much more powerful than mine, generally, as it relates to you. So we have one theme now. What we want to do is develop like maybe 6 to 12 of these that cover the main bases of your life. So I'm going to skip around now and we're going to develop a couple more. Go ahead. It looked like you were confused.
I'm just it's like I've heard you say so many of these things, but in seeing the way that you're processing it all and gathering it all up, it's like, oh, okay, it makes so much sense right now. But now I'm like, how do I replicate? How do I do that again? And I'm like, I don't know that I could start from scratch and do that again. Like,
do you mean start from scratch with a theme and do it again? Or
yeah.
Okay, but we're going to do it a couple times today so that you get the hang of it, and then I'm just going to keep helping you do it in the group membership. So you don't have to do any of this alone. In fact, look at what just happened. You feel that you're all alone all the time, and you've got to do it all yourself. It just happened. You know? You do not have to do it alone. This is not your responsibility. It's mine. We'll do it together. But you just developed another theme.
Yeah.
Tell me what you're feeling.
Yeah, it feels so odd to hear you say that.
What's odd about it?
I guess like right away I got this sense like I don't believe it. Like it's not.
What don't you believe?
It's like I feel like I can't let go. Like you're totally helping me with this and it's coming across logically. I see it and it makes so much sense. But there's this other thing that is like somehow I have to figure it out by myself. And as soon as this is done, then I somehow have to piece it all back together.
And you're on your own again.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read you a theme that I just wrote based on what you said. I want you to tell me if it doesn't feel right. I wrote this from your perspective. I always have to do it all alone. There is no one who will really be there for me because I truly cannot trust anyone.
Yeah.
Did I capture it? I want you to tell me.
Yeah. That's the feeling.
Okay. So now, what I want you to think about is this. When a situation comes up where you need to trust someone, and then a symptom comes up, this is the theme. This is the theme that's active right then. And that probably happens to you hundreds of times a day, unless you're alone. In which case, it still comes up because I always have to do it alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's another power column thing. We're shifting around a little bit, but in the power column, we're going to learn to help you actually be able to trust some people. Maybe it starts with me. That's totally fine with me. I'm a very trustworthy person. I'm here. And I'll show you over time. And I will help you feel that you can trust me. I mean, I've even seen it happen. In the group memberships, remember when I talked about the importance of people being angry on your behalf?
Yeah.
And I get angry about what has happened to you. I can see that feels very good in the moment. Very good. Like a starving person getting food. But then you go back to, I got to do it alone. Yeah. Right? So we're going to track these, and we're going to learn how they relate to your symptoms. But as we identify these themes, it's very important. In the power column, we're going to learn to help you actually trust maybe a few people. Not everybody, just some trusted sources. And I don't mean just try to trust them. When we get to the power column, I'm going to help you actually find a path towards actually trusting them, because I'm going to show you why you haven't trusted them. Okay? I got to put that aside for a sec, though, because I want to keep developing these emotional themes. We've got the blaming the self. We've got the I have to do it alone and I can't trust anybody. Now let's develop this safety theme. Basically what you said is safety has never been anywhere. And I wonder, do you even believe it can exist for you? I do, but it doesn't matter what I think.
I think that I feel like I saw a glimpse of that, of what that might be when I heard people, right? When I heard people be vulnerable and not get attacked, not get made fun of, not get any of the things that I guess I would expect from my environment. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I saw like a glimpse and I'm like, oh, maybe that is a thing that can happen. And then I raised my hand and I went and I talked and I felt something. And it was very confusing, I guess, for me. But so I feel like I've gained the belief that it's a possibility. I just don't know how to create that for myself.
Okay. Now, I have some ideas about this, but I'm just putting them out there. I am not like all-knowing about this or anything. I just know how to understand what I'm hearing. And then I give it back to you and you help me shape it, which is what we've done so far. But so far I have this. My environment has always been attacking. And I'm always in danger of not being accepted, which puts pressure on me to never let people down and anticipate their needs, and all connections feel tenuous. I don't know if that's right, but that's what I have so far.
Yeah, I feel like I'm struggling to connect to it, but I feel like that is the feeling in general.
Okay.
I don't know that, like, I always revert to like a logical place, and I'm like, I want to say no, of course not, but
you know what? I even know why. This is really interesting stuff, and we're going to figure this out as we go, and you may find that we're flowing in between columns a lot more because you already have the structure of it from the seminars and the memberships, and also just naturally who you are. I think that the minute I said your environment does something to you, you couldn't connect. You always connect through it's your fault. Always.
Yeah, I can feel that right away. It's so interesting. Like, I'm seeing myself. It's like almost this like scoff or like a laugh that comes out of me every time I hear you say something that, like, right after it, I just like feel internally some emotional thing that, again, this is the first time that I'm starting to feel like I'm able to actually connect to what I'm feeling, like, consistently.
Mm-hmm. When you say now is the first time, though, do you mean recently or you mean even right here?
Right now.
Wow.
Right now, very consistently, I'm like listening to you say stuff and like, all right, I didn't do that almost laugh instant, like,
yeah,
like,
no, you're really letting yourself be there.
Yeah, like, I didn't do that when you said it, when you worded it a certain way. As soon as you switch the wording and you hit something, like, I did it again. And I'm like, now I'm catching it. It's like every single time in this call I've been doing that. And I didn't even realize that I did that. Or maybe I haven't been doing that because I haven't been connecting to it.
Okay, and we're going to find out more about why. It could also be something about your and my connection and maybe you feeling safe enough that we can do this, but we're going to find our way anyway. But I'm going to read it back to you the way I have it now. And I want you to recognize if you can feel it or if you're pushing it away because I refuse to put the blame on you because it isn't your fault. I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to help you not do it. But we got to work to get there. So here's what I have. I combined a couple of things. I am unsafe everywhere because my environment is attacking, and I am always in danger of not being accepted, which puts pressure on me to never let people down, and always trying to anticipate what others will want or need, and as a result, all connections feel tenuous.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean,
and can you feel it?
Logically, like that's definitely the feeling.
And you're not pushing it away now, it seems. Okay, so this is important because if you have a symptom, you may find it happened because this connection you wanted started to feel tenuous, or because the environment started to attack, or because you didn't feel accepted. They're all part of this theme. And we want to start to pinpoint when you have certain symptoms, which one of these things is it connecting to? So right now we have a theme of self-blame, we have a theme of aloneness, and we have a theme of lack of safety as the broad topics.
Yeah.
And they're all really good. Not good that you experienced it, but really good in their development. So now let's go back to another one that jumped out at you as kind of most important at the beginning, being seen and heard.
Yeah.
You have not felt seen and heard much.
Right.
I think you have today. I shouldn't speak for you, but that is kind of what you said. So
yeah, no, yeah.
When have you been seen and heard in your life?
So I think I can come up with like a lot of things logically, but because I consider myself very fortunate to have my two parents still living. My dad's in his 90s. And I feel like I have a big family and they're all around, and I'm sure come up with things that I can feel grateful for, which I tend to gravitate towards, I think. But actually like feeling it, like actually feeling like I've been heard, the thing is, I feel like I haven't given anyone the opportunity. I haven't expressed, I haven't talked about any of these things. And the times that I did, I think I made up my mind that it wasn't a healthy thing for me to do before I got too far within it.
Okay, so I want to share something with you. This is a really important one because when I work with anybody, I have to figure out how is their particular column working. And your column, your emotions column here, is always coming through the lens of it's my fault. It just always is.
Oh,
it just happened again. It's like, and I'm not saying it critically, I'm saying it supportively and lovingly. Every time you think that there's a problem, you say, it's probably me, I didn't give them the chance. Think about it this way, Misa. You were a kid, just like anybody else. You didn't give them less of a chance. They failed you. I know it's hard to do that because you're so busy, you're so used to falling on the grenade. But you're just a person. You're just as easily seen as anybody else, and just as easily heard as anybody else. And it's not like you say nothing. I know you. I see you right away. Why didn't they? Is it really your fault? I know you're not going to answer that right now, but the way your emotions column work is it's interesting. You're going to have a rule in your emotions column to cut through the tendency to blame yourself before you can even use these themes. So I need to make a note of that. And this is a way in which everybody's columns work differently. We are finding out how your emotions column works. Is this making sense to you?
It gets hard to grasp. I think when I feel like now I'm starting to catch some things like, oh yeah, I'm gonna beat myself up again.
Yes.
And that's, yeah, I'm like, I disconnect, I disengage when I feel.
I'm going to say something really important about this for us to hold on to. You haven't thought about it this way, and there's no reason you would have. But when you do that, that's a trauma response.
Yeah.
And I did a video on this where people who are kind of in trauma or have their trauma activated can have trouble using the columns well until they recognize that trauma.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're seeing right here.
Yeah. So that's exactly it. And I recognize, I'm starting to recognize, is the last couple of days I've been like way more aware of it and catching myself and kind of like retracting a little bit till I can come back and then make sense of things. But it's like everything, the way that you're structuring these, like, I see that it makes so much sense now before, like for the first time, yet somehow it's like, wait, having a hard time keeping it, like somehow grabbing onto it and absorbing it.
Then that's trauma right there. That it's trauma that's walling you off from it. But this work is still getting done, especially because I'm doing it with you.
Yeah.
I have this. Even if you completely forgot everything, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Over time, what we're going to find is we're going to take that trauma response first and bring it down enough that then you can look at these columns. But in the meantime, we're still getting gold in terms of the information that's here. And you will be able to use this. But right now, the main thing we've achieved today is kind of, in addition to building out some themes, in the process of building out your themes, we got to the fact that trauma is interfering with your ability to use this column fully so far.
Yeah.
It's not going to stay that way. And actually, your power column is where that's really going to get resolved.
Okay.
Then you'll be able to go back and say, okay, now I can use that emotions column. You know, nobody can use an emotions column when they're in trauma because they can't even think straight.
Yeah.
They just can't.
Yeah. It's taken me, I think that's what's taken me the longest to recognize and to come to realize. And I'm glad that it happened right now, and that, like, because I just being able to, I guess, like, be here, process or go through that experience, and then to have you actually look at it, it's almost like, oh yeah, I went to the doctor and actually showed him the thing that like was actually hurting, and it was actually hurting at the time that he was looking at it, and it just feels like, oh, okay, like it happened. He saw it. Like, it's not just this thing that I was like making up or yeah, right. I think that's the feeling that it gives me.
That's right. None of this is made up. None of it's false. None of it's wrong. It just needs to be understood. And it needs to be understood in a way where you could believe it.
Yeah.
And you can trust it. Doesn't matter what I think.
Yeah.
But that's starting to happen more and more. And some of that is, we've built some of that from the seminar, gave you a lot of the intellectual information you needed. The group memberships give you that moment-to-moment, experience of combing through these things. But getting to sit down for a session like this adds something else as well. Even though this is the kind of work we can do in the group memberships as well, or even in the seminar, because we actually did some of this in the seminar. I'll get to that in a second. But we're just identifying how the whole thing works. You've got your columns. They work the way they work. We're going to identify what that is so that you can see it. But there's this added thing of interpret it through the lens of trauma. Now, I want to jump back for a second about something. Do you mind me talking about, there was a moment in the seminar that was where I changed a word in your core narrative and it opened something up. Do you mind me talking about that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no problem. Go ahead.
Okay. So you were saying something like, I was made to feel kind of not valued enough. And it was the right idea, but it wasn't as strongly worded and in your corner as what I ended up saying. And I said to you, Misa, I think that you ended up feeling like you were worthless. And that was the last word I heard from you that session because it was so powerful. So powerfully emotional. So that's going to be another one of your themes. Or maybe it's already subsumed in the I'm unsafe because, I'm not going to be accepted. I think it's its own separate thing, though. Feeling worthless. And why? And we're going to fill all of these out. By the way, I took notes on all of this. So even if we didn't get a theme into a full sentence, we can start making a list. And I'm going to send this to you. And you can look at the list and be like, okay, I think we've covered a lot of the territory, but we didn't get to this theme. And you might just jot that down. In the week in between now and the next session, I want us to work on this. I want us to try to get these themes spelled out kind of the way that I did with the 4 themes that I have here. The not expressing yourself, but then blaming that, thinking you're not expressing yourself when you are, and then blaming yourself. Then there's the more general blaming yourself theme and holding yourself responsible for everything. Actually, I'm going to add one more that seems pretty clear to me, which is questioning your own reality. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay. Look, we could come up with 40 of these. That's okay. I don't care how many it is. But we'll slowly condense them and polish them and hone them until they are a group of themes that you feel covers who you are emotionally. And then the way that you're going to be able to use them is always going to have to be, at least at first, it's going to have to be first run through the trauma lens. Am I even here to use these themes? Can I take this in, or is it feeling too confusing? Am I feeling distance from it somehow? That's all trauma.
Yeah.
So these are kind of the steps of using your emotions column system. Check in about trauma, find out which of these themes is active. Of course, we don't have them all fleshed out yet, but once we do, find out which one's active at a given moment that's causing the symptom, and boom, you've got your emotions column.
Okay. Makes sense.
Do you feel like you've got more of a bead on where we're headed with this column than you did before?
Oh yeah, definitely. I really like the way that it all unfolded. The way that, you just had such a simplistic way of kind of going from topic to topic. It just seems so effortless. And it was for me in this situation, because I think you were kind of guiding the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really helpful. I'm looking forward to being able to start connecting what I'm actually going through currently with what my physical symptom is. And I don't think I'm at that point. I have all these things going on in my body all the time, and I haven't quite pinpointed at what point they come up and what things are tied to each thing.
And we're going to need more time with that in one way or another. We could do it in the membership groups, but we might even find that we take some of the time next session to see how that's going, to see how that's starting to sink in. So the first step here is to continue to take the notes that I send you and develop them into sentences. I know you think you're not good at expressing yourself, but you're actually brilliant at it. You just underestimate yourself all the time. So we could help you develop these into those sentences. We've got the kind of trauma filter that we're going to bring in place first. And after that, the only other step is to start pairing these things.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's it.
That's great. Okay. So I will take your notes and I will start developing sentences.
Okay. So let's, and we can trade some information about this. But each column really is meant to, in your interactions with me, I am supposed to solidify your understanding of what it all is, how you use it, what your plan is, and then you go do it. It's not actually nearly as hard as you think. But it makes sense that it would seem that hard. It makes, I'm explaining to you a theory that I created based on my own experience that no one else knows. So, of course, it's complicated to kind of download that into you.
Yeah.
But that's what we're doing. And today we did a huge amount of it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not just that. It's also the fact that I'm delving into something that, again, my whole life I went without ever like exploring or trying to identify. I kind of was oblivious to a lot of these things. And now, like the first time I'm delving into like, okay, what is it? What am I going through? What am I feeling? What are my emotions? What is my body doing? It's all, I think it's all kind of a little bit overwhelming, but
sure.
But
well, it's
not when you have the right tools, I think.
Right. It's like learning a foreign language, except that I have like hacks that can get us into a place where you can understand what's happening faster, more fully, and in a shorthand that you will understand. And that's what we're working towards.
Yeah.
So this was great. You did a beautiful job with it. I know it's not easy to share these things. I'm honored that you trust me with it. I also know that, you trust in the moment, but then you probably will be like, oh, I don't know if I can continue to trust. I'll win you over in that department. And part of that is to help you see you always blame yourself. You always think you've got to do it all yourself. You don't. I won't even let you. So this is good work, Misa. I think we are on a very good path because the emotions column has just become much more clear, I think, what it is. And it's going to become even clearer as we email a little bit about this and then talk about it next week. So let's wrap up for today, but great start, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of this. It's been really great, and I think it's kind of exactly what I needed. I think that the other tools are going to be really helpful once I get a little bit more in depth and I have a little bit more understanding. Then integrating some of the other tools it's going to be a lot easier, because right now it felt maybe a little bit overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's one of the points of this system, is to get it to become less and less overwhelming, more and more clear what these tools are and how to use them. So I think we did a good job with that, and we'll keep it up.
Okay.
All right, Misa, so I'll see you next week.
Okay. See you next week.
Every session I do in this regard is a striking session in one form or another, but the things that jumped out at me about this with Misa were how the columns allow clarity to come to the surface as we work at it. It became very clear that Misa understood the concepts very well, but it wasn't solidifying in a certain way, and there were two reasons for that. One was we had to identify that trauma was interfering at first. So that was an important step. From that point forward, once we recognized that, he started to see how we can crystallize these themes, how they can start to come into focus, how it all actually simplifies the system and makes it easier to work with. So these are the things that make this system work so well. They give people tools that they've never had before, and they start to open up ground. And Misa and I are already on a good journey with this. I look forward to seeing where it goes next. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally.